Hey guys, my name is Killuas.UI.Theming and in today's video I'm gonna show you my own theming system. I hope this tutorial is helpful, so let's dive right into it. Alright, before we get into the theming system itself, let's quickly see how to install it. First, right click on your project and select Manage Nuget Packages. Then switch to the Browse tab and make sure that the Show Previous Version box is checked. You can find it right here. Just a quick note, this package is currently in its alpha stage. That's why you need to enable previous version. Once that's done, simply search for Killuas.UI.Theming. And here it is. Click install, accept the license terms, and you are good to go. First of all, I want to explain that there are three theme modes: single, modular, and hybrid. Single mode is an all-in-one collection mode, where everything is handled in one place. Modular mode splits things up into separate modules, so each specific theme has its own collection. Hybrid mode is a mix of both, combining the all-in-one way with separate modules. We start with the single mode. All we need in the beginning is a simple Xaml resource dictionary. First, add the required namespace to the resources. And now, we create a theme resources element and give it a key. In this example, I'll name it single, but you can call it whatever you want. Once that's done, we have to choose a collection. For the single mode, the only connection that works is theme dictionaries. Inside this collection, you can add as many theme dictionaries as you want, but make sure you always have at least one default theme dictionary. For this setup, I'm using 3 brushes and 2 corner variations. All brushes share the same key, background. Each theme dictionary overrides this key with a different color. The corner values also share the same key, corner radius, with different values for flat and rounded styles. When you are finished, don't forget to add this resource to the app.xaml merge dictionary. Otherwise, the system will throw a clear exception to let you know that it's missing. Next step, the main view model. Create a new class file. First, add the required namespaces for resources and the view model. Make sure your main view model inherits from ThemeViewModel base. Then we create two properties of type ThemeValue and name them exactly like the keys we used in the theme dictionaries, background and corner radius. After that, we override the apply theme method. In this method, we check if the theme dictionary contains specific keys, and if it does, we update the corresponding properties. Now we will initialize the theme service. Open app.xaml and app.xaml.cs. First, add the required namespace where your main view model lives. Next, create a reference to your main view model inside the app.xaml file. Name it Themes. Then, add the required namespaces for services and your main view model in app.xaml.cs. Now call ThemeService.initializeThemes. Passing in your main view model and the theme mode currently in use. Theme mode single dictionary. Finally, set the themes resource to ThemeService.currentViewModel. Time for the real magic. I've already set up the buttons for you. Now we just bind the background and corner radius properties to those buttons. Don't forget to add .value to bind the actual value of the property. Make sure you set the source to the themes resource which we create in app.xaml. When a button gets clicked, call the ThemeService.applyTheme and pass the correct theme dictionary key. Make sure each button has the right key assigned. And finally, run the app and check out the results. If you click orange flat, the button will get an orange background. Same for purple flat. If you click green rounded, the button will get rounded corners. Same thing for purple rounded. Now let's jump into modular mode. This is where things get a bit more organized. Instead of using the single theme dictionary collection, like in single mode, we split things up into separate collections. Inside your theme resource, replace theme dictionaries with collections like theme brushes dictionaries and add a theme corners dictionaries collection. Then, move all your brush related keys like background into the brushes collection and all corner radius keys into the corners collection. I have also renamed some keys for clarity. One important thing, you can also create multiple theme resource instances if you want. For example, one for brushes and another for corners. This gives you even more flexibility and keeps things super clean. This modular approach makes your themes easier to maintain and extend, especially as your app grows bigger. For the modular and hybrid mode, I highly recommended using sub-ViewModels to keep everything clean and organized. First, create two new CS files and name them sub-brushes ViewModel and sub-corners ViewModel. Add the required namespaces for your resources and the ViewModel. Both classes have to inherit from theme ViewModel base. Next, open your main ViewModel again and add two new properties of type sub-brushes ViewModel and sub-corners ViewModel named theme brushes and theme corners. Override the methods apply brush theme and apply corner theme from the theme ViewModel base class. Now move the properties from the single mode, background and corner radius into the emerging sub-view models. Then copy the implementations of apply brush theme and apply corner theme methods from your main ViewModel into the corresponding sub-view models. Inside the apply brush theme and apply corner theme of each sub-view model, you can use the exact same logic as you did in single mode to update the property values. Finally, in your main ViewModel, just forward the apply brush theme and apply corner theme calls to the sub-view model by using themebrushes.apply brush theme and themecorners.apply corner themes. Don't forget to remove the old apply theme method of your main ViewModel, because it's no longer needed in modular mode. To initialize modular mode, simply open your app.xaml.cs file and set the theme mode parameter inside the initialize theme method to modular dictionaries. That's all you need to switch from single mode to modular mode. Time for the modular magic. I've already set up the buttons for you. Since we move the ViewModel properties into sub-view models, the properties are no longer directly inside the main ViewModel. That means binding to something like background.value won't work anymore. Instead, you have to use the matching sub-view model property. For example, themebrushes.backgroundValue, and then it works again. Inside the button click method, you cannot use ThemeService.ApplyTheme when working in modular mode. Instead, you have to call the specific methods depending on the type of the theme you want to apply. For example, use ThemeService.ApplyBrushTheme for brushes and ThemeService.ApplyCornerTheme for corners. And finally, run the app and check out the results. If you click flat, the button will get flat corners. If you click purple, the button will get purple background. Same for green and orange. If you click rounded, the buttons will get rounded corners. Next is the powerhouse hybrid mode, the combination of single and modular mode. With the hybrid mode, we can combine both modes. The single mode collection theme dictionaries and the modular mode collections theme brushes dictionaries and theme corners dictionaries. For that, create a new theme resource instance with a new theme dictionary collection for the single mode resources, like border brush and thickness. In my case, I keep the theme dictionary collection separated from the modular ones to keep things organized. But if you prefer, you can put all collections into one theme resource instance. That works as well. For the hybrid mode, we need to adjust a few things inside our main ViewModel class. Create two new properties of type ThemeValue, named like keys we added before, border brush and thickness. Override the apply theme method and use the same logic as in single and modular mode. The subview models stay exactly as they were in modular mode. To initialize hybrid mode, simply open your app.xaml.cs file and set the theme mode parameter inside the initialize themes method to hybrid dictionaries. Time for powerhouse hybrid mode magic. I've already set up the buttons for you. Since we added the properties to the main view model, we can use the bindings without the subview model properties. Inside the button click method, call ThemeService.ApplyTheme to update border brush and thickness. For background and corner radius, call ThemeService.ApplyBrushTheme and ThemeService.ApplyCornerTheme respectively. And finally, run the app and check out the result. If you click on border visible, the buttons will get visible borders. If you click flat, the button will get flat corners. If you click purple, the button will get purple background. Same for green and orange. If you click on border collapsed, the buttons will get collapsed borders. If you click rounded, the buttons will get rounded corners. And that's it. You've just mastered the basics of the Killuas theming system. This package is currently in alpha state, which means things might change, improve or expand in the future. Stay tuned for updates and new features. Your feedback and ideas are always welcome to shape the future of this system. Until then, happy theming and keep building awesome things!